peeps, good morning. Good morning, Reaper people. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is the song I sing to Kiri in the morning. Good morning, good morning. So there we are. I've sung the Kiri song to you all. Hi, welcome to Reaper Pro Tips, where we apparently continuously paint a spirit beast forever and ever and ever and ever. Because I did a thing yesterday and I'm like, oh, I should talk to them about, how to make this stand out and what to do. And I should do the rock and maybe we should sculpt a tree limb or I should show them stuff. And yeah, we're still on Spirit Beast. I pretty much decided I'm finishing it at this point. Almost. Like, I won't make you guys watch, wings all over again, but, a lot of this other stuff, yeah, totally. Spirit beasts are immortal. Yeah, well, also, guys, I taught you get a bit about this, but when you're freelance, you kind of have to watch your bottom line. You have to make sure your time is well spent, and you can't just work on a model, just finish it when you've got commissions pending and stuff like that, unless it has a purpose. So I figured, because my Patreon has a level, well, the $10 and $15 level, people get first dibs on minis I'm selling. So I thought I would finish Spirit Beast and offer it up for sale to my patrons. And so on my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig if you haven't looked at it. I know a lot of you have joined recently. Thank you so much. Especially with the hit we all took kind of with COVID. A lot of Patreons, kind of went because people were in hardship, right? So you totally understand. But a lot of you have come on and signed up and I really love it. Thank you so much. I just put up a thing yesterday about how to do tattoos, so I hope you enjoyed it. But yeah, hello. So let's say hi to everybody. We have a Kuroniko and an Iffy, and a Dysphamist, and a On the Road to Tea. I see, Margaret, I have to sing now when I see your name. Threads of Fate, and Heather, and Twisted Oma, and Crispies. Hey, yeah. Alright. Oh, thanks for the sub, Threads. Awesome. And Zebo. And Janky, and Casmania. Casmania, for a moment, I thought that it wasn't a 7. I thought it was a question mark. I thought it was Casmania. And I was like, whoa, are you questioning your existence? Because, I've had those days. Awesome. Hey, Achilles Blade and Chewy. Good morning. All right, well, let's get to it. Let me show you guys. I'm kind of excited about what I did yesterday. It's super fun. I may need to kind of paint the ground behind it so you guys can see what I did yesterday. So let's pop over. Let me deactivate my intro in case I want to chat with you guys. No. I already deactivated it. See, I'm totally behind myself or ahead of myself or something. All right, so let me put its little card in front of it. So what I did yesterday, you remember I was starting to build up some water effects on top of this. So let me see if I can make it show up. There we go. So look against the dark, and this is actually what I'm going to be talking about today, is making some of this stuff. When you've got a translucent effect, you can sometimes make it look stand out by putting a dark color behind it. So originally I was going to use the base, right? Because I'm going to do it in dark gray. But then I realized, oh no, the tail goes on there. It slots right in. So I need to paint my tail today. And I need to do it dark, which is different from the concept I originally had. But if I want that awesome water effect to show up, then there needs to be dark behind it. So now I'm kind of rethinking about how I want to do El Spirit Beast here, as far as the colors go. And I'm thinking maybe more like a magenta, kind of like the antlers, maybe a dark magenta for some of the underside of the tail. And then for the outer edges, highlighting it up to clear magenta and white and making it more ghosty toward the upper edges. But having that shadow on the underside so the water shows up. So what I did, you guys saw me kind of building it up yesterday in little dabs, but what I also did is I put a glob of that water effects. Let me get out the product again for those of you who did not come in yesterday to join us. It's fine. I totally understand. There are other priorities in life, like food and puppies and good books and miniatures. So what I use is Woodland Scenic's water effects. You could probably get it on Amazon. This bottle has lasted for over 10 years. It may actually be 20 years old at this point. I just need to shake it up every time I use it. And it's kind of goopy. So when you shake it and put it down, so you can kind of sculpt with it. I mean, it's like trying to sculpt with toothpaste, right? That's actually a pretty apt thing. So there you go. See, it squeezes out. And you only need a tiny bit at a time, so you can see why this bottle has lasted me for 20 years, and I'm glad it's still good. But what I did, what I was doing yesterday is I was using my brass rod. Where are you, Tiny Spoon? Oh no, Tiny Spoon has gone missing. Oh no! no, Tiny Spoon, where are you? Oh, well, I kind of have to use another sculpting tool then. I was using a bit of brass rod to kind of just dab the paint or the goop on. But if you kind of shape your goop down here on the plastic card into like swirlies and whirlies and stuff, and you kind of shape it, you know, kind of the way you like it, but you don't have to. I actually kind of left it there, kind of wavy. Let me see if I can get this up. There, you can kind of see, right? So if you let that partially cure, so you want to cure essentially the outer edge usually, you can actually scrape it right up off the plastic card where it's thick enough. So utilize something, actually the clay shaper would probably be a great option. Remember to always wipe this stuff off your tools so it doesn't set, but it is pretty plasticky. So, you know, if you accidentally leave some on your steel tool, you can usually just peel it right off, just like you can on the plastic card. But you could probably use a clay shaper to kind of make the base look a little bit more the shape you want. So let the outside edge cure, and then the inside should still be like white and a little bit goopy. Like it'll get a skin on the outside. But once it's kind of at that point, you can stick a sculpting tool into it and really gouge it and pull it apart. Oh, there's Tiny Spoon. He was hiding. He didn't want me to brutalize him by using him with the goop again. But once you can do that, you can pull that whole thing off, and you've got this kind of ragged goop that's still only partially set. And then you can put it on and just glue it directly onto the base so that you get the effect, that crumbling, like kind of flying water effect. And then you can take additional fresh goop and kind of do these little tendrils like I did. Here, let me put it up there. It's like that flying tendril toward the top that's kind of flying toward the rear. Let me hold it. There we go. All right. So this little tendril here, you know, that little tendril there, you can kind of create those then on top of it. And you can take additional goop and kind of stick it on around this thing so that it gets more three-dimensional. So you can see it's quite three-dimensional. It floofs up quite a bit. This is still green stuff because I know the tail is going to slot in there, so I didn't even have to paint it. And then I did a little glob down here on this one, and I started building up a glob on this one, and that's when I pretty much ran out of time. So I wanted to talk about the usage on that. Let's see here. What do we got? Not Tiny Spoon. I know. I can't lose Tiny Spoon. I do have a backup Tiny Spoon, but, you know, having two Tiny Spoons, it keeps me from panicking that I'm going to lose the one. Am I the only one getting emotionally attached to Tiny Spoon? Yes, I am totally emotionally attached to Tiny Spoon. Absolutely. It is the best sculpting tool ever. No, I totally get there too, Sethany. I totally get there too. It's like my main sculpting tool. If I lost it, I would like cry and then I would email Gene and beg him to make me a new one. So yeah, absolutely. So it's not just you. Hello. What do we have? We have Masara who just came in. Hello. Good morning. I was just showing people, actually let's just paint. I'm going to at least base coat the rock in a dark gray. And I don't have to use any new colors at all because I've got my Besmara black, remember, which we used, and I'm going to use it again to create kind of a darker underside for the tail. So we're going to put like a drop and a half of Besmara. And when I'm mixing, I want a dark gray rock to kind of give some contrast to his lighter hooves. And also because it would be wet in the river, so it probably would be darker. So let's put... You usually have to use about twice as much white as black because that's just the pigment ratio that you need to get a middle gray. The black's a bit stronger and it diffuses. What it really is happening is the pigment is dispersing better for the black than the white. The black has a smaller pigment grind. It disperses very easily through the white, which is big and heavy. And so in order to overcome that, you need to add a little stuff. Now, the other thing you could do, and you could do this now or you could do it later, and this is a very French thing, a French painter thing, is there's a school of thought that you should use some of the colors on your model in the basing. And the reason that they teach that is that it makes the base look like it belongs on the model, right? Because you've got just these little hints of color that repeat. So it's kind of like when I'm thinking about actually using some magenta in the water for that same kind of effect. And also because for this model, I often don't do it because I do think that it's not something that needs to be done all the time, and the French painters would totally disagree with me. But I do like it on this model because Spirit Beast is so mystical that I feel like everything around him, including the water and the stone, are going to kind of be touched with his presence or her presence. So for me, I think this might be a suitable model to repeat colors, to take colors from Spirit Beast and use them in the water and the rock to imply that he's kind of affecting everything in his environment. So, but for now, we want to put down a coat of gray on this. And this hopefully will make it easier to see the water that I did. Yeah, see, now you can see it. So if you do this stuff with translucency, and this also applies to if you're using translucent models, like some of Reaper's translucent bones, and you're like using them maybe for bits, or you're maybe making a backdrop for a translucent model. If you want the translucent model to show up better, chances are you want to use a black backdrop for it, or for if you're using a translucent part, you want to use a dark background, because it'll make that translucent part pop out a little bit more. So let's just paint this whole rock. I'm going to sculpt water over it, eventually, but right now, we just want to get kind of a base coat down. And now remember that Tianzia Jade and Clear Magenta make blue. So if I chose to follow that French painting philosophy where colors on the model are repeated on the basing, I could just add a drop of each of these into the gray. It would turn the gray slightly blue because that's what those colors make. But I kind of don't want to do that because I've already got that blue right here down low on his legs. And so I don't want to repeat it too close. So I think what I'll do instead, let me get him in focus here. Hold on. There we go. So what I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to thin these down and put little touches of the green and magenta on the rock, maybe glazing over each other a little bit here and there, just to suggest that it's a little bit. I might even mix them into the gray and maybe add some white and make the highlights have a little bit of color, or maybe I'll just use them in the shadows. I'm not sure. It's easy to hide colors in the shadow. So if you want to have a touch of color on your basing, that's the same as your model, but you don't want to be obvious about it. A shadow is an easy place to hide that. Let's see here. Yeah, true enough, Crispies. Although this blue is so intense, honestly, you wouldn't really see the rock disappear because the saturation level is so different. Even if this rock was a blue-gray, the fact that I'm using a very saturated blue here on the water means that the rock would lose its appearance of blueness. Like, you'd just be pretty much wasting it. Because this blue, putting a saturated color next to a desaturated color of the same type usually makes the saturated color, like, the desaturated color will cease to look that way. So if you put a bright green next to a gray green, your gray green is going to look more gray because it's fighting against that bright green, right? Your eye is going to catch on that bright green. It's going to say, well, that's green. And then it's not going to pick up the green and the green gray. Muted colors being a little more, since our eye doesn't attach that much importance to them compared to bright ones. It's just the way we humans are visually wired. So our brain center is like, well, so it doesn't pick up on the color then in the muted surroundings. Whereas if you put that green gray next to a pure gray like this, you absolutely would see the color in it. So remember, color is relative. It's all like that. So you want to just kind of keep that in mind. Now I could go with the blue here on the rock because I do have those tan hooves, but I just think it's too much. It's too much down there. So I kind of want to go neutral. Another thing is I've got a lot of colors on the model already, right? I've got that magenta that I'm going to start bringing in more, especially on the tail. I've got the blue, I've got the green, both dark and light. I've got a lot going on already. And then I've got this blue of the water, which is totally different. So at some point, you've got to stop and essentially make yourself back off and go, I don't need any more colors here. So I'm going to reach for my neutrals. So thus reaching for that tan color for the hooves, reaching for the gray color for the rock. That's where you reach for your neutrals. And I use neutrals a lot for that reason. I don't want a model usually that's color crowded, so to speak. So my basic color theory is always to use at least 2 or 3 strong colors, but then to go with what I call helper colors after that. Those of you who have watched my Dark Sword DVD that I did for Jim, me and Jennifer did it, actually, and I think I still like it. I think a lot of it is very useful still. But I talk about, I do like color theory in 20 minutes on that DVD, and I talk about helper colors. And what helper colors are the neutrals that don't clash with anything, so that you can use them with almost anything else, and they're just fine. And a medium dark gray like this is really one of them. It doesn't, there are colors it doesn't love, but it's not going to clash with anything. Black obviously is one of them. White is obviously one of them. But there are also things like neutral dark browns, like the russet brown 9199 and black and brown 9137. Dark neutral browns tend to help other colors kind of glom together. They're an inoffensive neutral. You can put them with any other bright color on Earth, and they're just going to be fine with it. So, you know, they look good with everything. And so I call them helper colors because they help you if you're running out of room on your model and you need another, you know, you obviously have to paint that belt and that pouch some color. So choose a dark brown. The other one is, that works is a cream, warm cream colors, like stained ivory and creamy ivory. And I actually used that with his hooves because I knew they'd be pretty inoffensive. Because I started, if you remember, I started with Driftwood Brown. Driftwood Brown is a great shadow for stained ivory. So I could essentially come up like that and utilize that neutral kind of warm cream color for his hooves. It doesn't really clash with anything. Now, what this color wouldn't be good for, you kind of have to watch the helper color, cream color, only with like oranges and yellows, and really only with light orange and yellow. Sometimes you'll have a little bit of a clash there, only because they're so similar. But otherwise, yeah, I consider like the warm light cream colors to be a good neutral. Because you can highlight them up to white, then they can look like white, and white itself is a neutral. So there you go. So there's some color choice theory stuff of thing. Who's it? Hi, Rathmore. How's it going? And Zambies. Yay. Awesome. So what we were talking about, guys, is, well, obviously I was talking about color theory, a lot of it. And color choices, and why I just went with gray with the rock, because I have enough colors on the model at this point, so I have to be careful I don't over color. I do want some black though, because I missed some green there under the hoof, and I want to correct that. But yeah, so you see my little water spray and everything. I also dug out some gloss sealer. You can use Reaper's gloss sealer. I also had, you may want to use a thicker gloss sealer, which some hobby shops sell for cars. I have an old microscale microgloss bottle, and let's see how glossy that turned out. Yeah, it's about the same as the Reaper. I did it a little bit on the wood here to test it last night to see how it was. It's a little goopier than the Reaper gloss. I do like the Reaper gloss in that you can put on several coats of it and build it up. This does have a decent shine on it though, and when you pool it, it gets very, very shiny. So I was thinking I need to gloss the water to make it all look correct. Now, glossing the water, unfortunately, it will probably lose some of my fine details here that I did on like the little, all those little ripples that go on rushing water, because it's hitting so many rocks and pebbles and everything as it's rushing around the rock. So I'll lose some of that, because the problem with a gloss coat is that you inevitably can't see freehand or fine detail as well. So, Crispies, I'm going to be careful there. Really careful. I think I'm going to probably have to do a bit of gloss, but I'm going to keep it lower on the rock. And I'm also going to have to paint the rock darker toward the water to show that. I don't want the entire rock glossy. I think that would be a big mistake. At that point, it really starts to clash with the mattness of the model. And also with rushing water, usually the top of the rock is going to be dry unless you've got big splashes and stuff. So I want to suggest that special effect. And I almost, as you point out, I have to, because I'm using gloss on the water. But I don't want it to go very high up the rock. I'll probably kind of make, we can talk about that today, because I was going to talk about painting the rock. So the rock and the tail. Little did you know there was so much that went into basing. So let's put that over there. Let me mix up. I want some black, maybe with some green and magenta in it. But yeah, I don't want to cover, the thing is, okay, so this is very tempting to just gloss the whole rock, but I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the theory behind that too. Gloss effects and finish effects are more effective if you apply them in small tactical ways. So like, I met somebody once, I was judging at Origins, I think, and there was somebody who entered an orc model, and to suggest oil and grease on it, they had just put a brown wash all over it. And so after the show, that person actually came up to me and wanted to know why she hadn't, placed higher. And I told her, I'm just like, well, you wanted oil, because I asked her about the dirty wash, and she's like, well, it's supposed to be covered in oil. And I'm like, if you want oil effects, you should focus them around where oil really would be. It's unlikely this guy took a bath in it. So essentially, keep your special effects smaller and targeted as to where they actually would be. It's much more effective on the model then. It's very easy to paint an entire rock gloss. It's much harder to kind of slowly darken the bottom part of it and paint gloss tactically over those areas, but it looks so much better. So always keep these kind of things in mind too. These little things that I think about when I'm putting a model together. I don't want to just, because the minute I put gloss all over this rock, then maybe I have to gloss the hooves, and then maybe I have to suggest water up on the legs. I don't want to do that. That's actually not what I want to do with this figure at all. So to get away from that, I need to make sure that I keep my water effects lower down on the model. Because I didn't set out to do a big wet model. I just set out to do a cool water effect and, just have it add something to the base, a sense of motion. So always remember your goals when you start out. I mean, you can always tell those goals to go take a hike. If you decided all of a sudden that you really wanted to do a wet base, like if you're doing a little dragon, like a Rocky on top of this rock, and you want him to suggest that he got out in the middle of the water and got like, oh my God, he got splooshed and half inundated, you could totally do like little dabs of gloss on him and maybe a big startled expression on his face and a big wave coming up, to suggest that story. But that isn't suggested necessarily in this story. So, got to kind of think about that. Hey, God Emperor Bob, how are you? So it's all these choices you make depending on your concept for the figure and the story behind it, right? And what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to introduce motion, whether the water is itself kind of a character in the story, like with the Rocky concept I just discussed. If you've got a big wave coming up to drench the little dragon, then that's a story about Rocky and the water, and then the water becomes a character. So, that's part of your focal point. But the water is not a character in this particular piece. Hopefully that all made sense. I'm talking pretty highfalutin stuff today. Wow, I thought this was going to be a basic. Basic stuff. Let's see here. I'm going to put some color in my black. Besmara black is a basic black. It does not have any pigment in it other than lamp black or coal black. However, it is a softer black. It's not quite as strong as some of our others, like pure black. Pure black is a stronger pure black. There we go. I really need to shake that one up. The phalos love to settle out, so this jade needs a good shaking before I apply it. So the reason I'm adding colors to my black is that regular black, and I've talked about this before, but straight up black is very dead to the eye. Like I was mentioning how the eye loves bright color and it tends to skip over muted colors. Well, it's the same thing with black, because black is just kind of dark, right? It's not there. Our eyes are tuned to light and bright. We are very sensitive to light and bright. And so one way to deal with that when you have to paint something dark or introduce dark shadows and you don't want it to be just a dead space on your model is to mix some colors into your black. Now, several Reaper blacks already have colors mixed into them. And one of those would be Dragon Black, and the other would be solid black. So solid black is actually a painter's black, and what I mean by that is that oil painters most often do not even touch pure black, don't even use pure black in their paintings. Instead, they mix the black, and they do it for the same reason that I just told you guys, which is that if they put a big heavy shadow under a rock on a landscape, they don't want that shadow to be totally like dead, just a black blob. Like it just won't do anything. If they mix colors to make their shadows, then that's still interesting. That still like will draw the eye more than black would. And so that would be like what is actually in the solid black in HD, although it's now bones since we ported them over to bones. It's got blue and brown pigment in it. So it also has black, but it's the closest thing to a painter's black we can get right now with the MSP. Although, if you really want to try this for yourself, you could mix Ultramarine Shadow 9187 with a bit of, I want to say, probably Russet Brown 9199. That should work. Those should create a really complex dark color that's very close to black and will look like black on the model. All right, so there we go. And I can usually tell when I mix in enough color that I can see it's not totally just black anymore. Like, it looks a little bit different to my eye. Maybe a little softer. If I mixed in some white to this, or I spread it out real thin, I can see it's got a slight bluish cast, which makes sense because I'm mixing these two colors. Remember, these two colors make blue, which is what we did on the wing there, to make a bluish color on the wing. And on the hoofs. Or, sorry, on the leg above the hoof. So, all right, where am I? Oh yes, I'm doing this. I wanted to use some black to touch up that hoof. And then I wanted to start on the tail. Haha, baseball. I miss, yeah, there's some pretty birds out here too, Zero. I actually, we have a hummingbird that comes outside of our window who really likes the redwood tree out there. I think because it's got holes in it that are small enough, because they've trimmed the branches that are close to the buildings, there are holes in there that are small enough for him to hide in if a predator comes along. But I'm sorely tempted to get a hummingbird feeder because we have hummingbirds here and I love them. So I'm just going to add a shadow under that hoof. And I'm probably going to add shadows all under these hoofs too, and probably extend this, like thin this black down a little bit, and put a shadow all under the beast at this point. Cast shadows, if I really want him to be like spirity and ghosty, then I wouldn't do this, but I think he's a little more solid than that, at least at the moment. So I'm going to use this complex black. I'm going to thin it down with a bit of water. Where's my dropper bottle? I need that. Dropper bottle, much more expedient here. Bloop, bloop, bloop. There. Just because I want it to go a little softer, I don't want it quite so harsh if I'm going to paint a shadow with it. Yeah, he's a big green hummingbird. I've seen the tiny little, even tinier little ones out in Arizona, my parents' place. I do love them. So maybe if we got him some food, he'd stick around on our deck. I was actually looking at people actually make little fountains for them because bird baths are too deep for them. So they use like bird fountains and try to make the spray really low, which is really funny. Yeah, I was looking at maybe planting some flowers that they really like too, because we have an extra planter on our deck. Let's see, I'm dropping everything on the floor because that's the way I'm rolling today. There I am. All right. But yeah, they're very cool birds. I like cool birds. There were a lot of cool birds in Texas too. I really miss the scissortails. There's some amazing scissortails that are out there. And it was nice to see hawks all the time too. There's lots of hawks in Texas. And of course the buzzards, who we can be thankful to for minimizing our roadkill. I haven't seen any buzzards out here. I don't know. They've got condors. That's the closest thing maybe. All right, so I'm going to block in some shadow under that hoof. And I've still got my gray open here, so if I want to, I can do some wet blending between the gray and the dark here, the almost black that I've got, to kind of fade in that shadow if I want to suggest like a more overcast a day. Or that he's a little bit in shade. If I want a more subtle shadow. If you want to do a really crisp shadow, the way to do it is to use a bright overhead light source. So like if I turn my lamp here and move him really right up next to it, then I can usually kind of see the shape of the shadow. But you need like a small bright light source to really see. And in reality, a lot of his wings mean that most of the rock is going to be in shadow. But here around him on the water, there's going to be a lot of reflected light, so I don't want to necessarily do that. Again, thinking of environment when you're thinking about putting shadows on your model or whatever, including shadows on the base. Still, I think that the top of the rock is going to be kind of darker, a little bit darker, just because of the wings. And then the sides of the rock may come up a little lighter. Turkey vultures in SoCal, yeah. Quail, fun. I've seen quail down in Arizona. Oh, Wild Birds Unlimited. Thanks, Francis. Yeah, there's totally... The Texas mockingbird is kind of cool, though. The southern mockingbird. Oh, honeybees also tend to like the hummingbird feeder. Well, that's good. I like honeybees. I like honey. So I would be glad to host some honeybees as well as some hummingbirds. Awesome. So I'm just blocking in some shadow. There we go. That's a little bit better. And then I think I'll try to introduce some color onto the sides of the base. Kind of missed a dark spot there. I've shaded around all the hooves at this point. Oh, I kind of missed that back hoof, that under that back hoof. I gotta catch that. You can see that spot of light underneath it. Oh yeah. They say that if you have more moving water, like if you put a little pump in your bird bath, you can deal with a lot of the mosquito problem because the baby mosquito larvae won't be able to stay alive in a moving water environment as well. I was looking at solar powered pumps for bird baths and fountains and found actually a couple on Amazon yesterday. But then I decided that we don't really have room for a bird bath on our back deck, so I just needed to settle for the hummingbird feeder. I get very ambitious sometimes. And I love birds. Alright, so let's get... Problem is he put bees in the hive. Yeah, well, they say that they aren't terribly aggressive as long as they're happy. Bees, I mean. Matt Clark at Reaper, his wife, I think, has bees, keeps bees, has a business with honey.
Life partner.
What? Life partner? Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if they'd actually gotten married. Yeah.
They didn't want to get married because I think he said that he didn't want her to get any of his debt. So it's with the intention that she's not financially responsible since, dialysis.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but she, I got some of their mesquite honey when she was selling it, and I love it. Mesquite honey is so good for glazing pork.
Oh, man. Like I have some in my pantry right now, Anne. Mm-hmm. That stuff is amazing.
Yeah, on pork especially, I think.
I've never tried it. I'm going to have to now that you've given me the idea.
Yeah, I glazed it over the top of my pork loin roast, and it was amazing.
When did you do this?
Huh?
When did you do this?
Back when I was in Texas.
And you never told me, Anne? We talk about recipes and protein.
Sorry.
I'm gonna have to try that. I really am. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, you wait until like the last 15 minutes on the pork loin roast. Although I may have added it earlier actually, because I wasn't in pork loin roasts. You don't do them at a very high temperature. So of course, if you're doing something really high temp, you want to hold off putting the honey on because it'll burn. But otherwise, with lower temps, you can get away with putting it on earlier. But yeah, I glazed it over the top of the fat cap on the pork loin roast, and it really was wonderful.
Oh boy! So it emulsified with the fat as the last
nom. It is full of nom. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, full of nom. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I imagine it would be good on chicken too, but I think with the pork, it just that mesquite with the pork is really, really good.
All right, that makes me wonder when you cooked it, because it cooks down a little bit. It doesn't burn, but when it cooks down, does it bring out those mesquite notes more so?
I found, I don't know, it's definitely a savory taste, right? More so than some other honeys, less floral. So you do get a bit of the mesquite, not a ton like you would if you were smoking it. I suppose you could do a combo and, smoke it and put the mesquite honey over the top, and then you might have some serious mesquite going on.
No, that's I don't want serious mesquite. I was just curious if it brought the mesquite flavors like versus the floral tone.
They're pretty. I mean, it's. I'm trying to remember. I definitely got more of a savory feel from it, than I would like with a wildflower orange honey. So.
She has some of that too, basically.
I think it's subtle. I think the difference is subtle because I think the difference in the honeys is subtle, right? Because you still have that honey flavor forefront, but when you're putting it over the top of a pork roast, I mean then you're introducing salt into the picture, right? Too, because you've salted the meat. So it definitely takes it a different direction, I think.
Yeah. Hello, I'm like itching to try this now. Did you try the other honey that he had? The second honey?
Oh no, I never got that one. I only got the mesquite.
That one tastes kind of like apricots, and it wasn't even...
Interesting.
Now, that one's actually my favorite for, like, standard sweet honey applications. But
oh, yeah.
All the mesquite stuff I found to be a little more Bitter's not the word, but it tastes more like, the way he'd put it, more like a fall honey, which is usually not edible, but he
All
said that
right.
it came out pretty, like, it was very rich, I guess you could say.
Yes, it is.
And so yeah, I think the perfect application would be what you did with it, which was with pork. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yep, yep. Yeah, it just seemed to me that mesquite was a great match for pork because, all that grilling and smoking and using mesquite with pork regularly. So even though it's not as strong of a flavor, I felt that, yeah, it would work. So it's one of my favorites. I hauled that honey all the way out here. I actually packed. There were very few food items that I packed, but that made it out here with me so that I can make some pork roast later this year and use it. So
I might take, as soon as the show's over, I might run out to the grocery store and grab a loin.
yeah. Yeah, pork loin roast I think is very underrated. It's not the pork tenderloin, but the pork loin, the big one. What they sometimes
Yeah,
call what do they call it? They've got another name for it, and I can never remember.
back bacon.
Maybe. I mean, it's a big chunk of meat with the fat cap on the top. But I love that fat cap and how it keeps the loin really tender. Now here's a question.
Too.
Yeah, here's a question. Do you salt your meat before you cook it?
Well, depends. So, like, I would say with roasts and things,
Yeah.
I would say a beef roast, no. I typically will just leave the seasoning that it cooks in for a while. I don't salt it prior to putting whatever I put in it. As
Okay.
far as a pork loin, it's been a long time since I made one, but I usually use a rub for pork
Oh,
loin.
oh, I mean salting it like a day or two in advance, like putting it.
Oh, you mean like curing it? Oh, to remove the moisture and concentrate the flavors.
Yes.
Um,
I've
I only do that typically when I do like the refrigeration, almost wet aging as they call
Well,
it,
yeah,
with
that's what
like
you do.
ribeyes
Yeah,
and stuff.
I put the salt on and then I refrigerate it for a day. But I found that with a loin roast, doing it for 2 days before you cook it makes it really moist and flavorful in the end.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a top
I'm gonna have
chef
to try
trick.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I hear like whenever I watch like real good chefs talk about this sort of thing, they're like always salt your meat, always, always, always. And leave
Hmm.
it in the fridge for at least half a day, preferably a full day. It depends on what kind of meat, right? But
Yeah,
chickens 24, like whole chickens 24 hours, and you salt the heck out of them. It really
yeah. No,
increases the
I've
flourishing.
only ever done that with like ribeyes and maybe some choice cuts of steak, but I'd never thought to do it with like, well, chickens really, or even pork. Like I don't eat a whole lot of pork and chicken, to be fair, though, or
Yeah.
chicken more so, but not pork. I eat pork so sparingly.
Yes, Inara is correct. The pork is what they yeah shoulder or butt. I think you're right on the butt, Mathophile. It's pork loin is what they cut up for pork chops. She's Inara is exactly right. Um,
Mac Styles.
yes, yep.
You know what? We'll do that. Ann and I will next
Do
year
a
when we have
cook
a new
off.
person, when we bring her in, well, we will cook something and then we will have the community vote.
Hey, and a pork loin is huge, so like I could totally
Yeah,
do
we can
one.
feed people.
Yeah, I always had leftovers for forever. I ended up freezing half of it all the time, which was not bad. I like easy dinners, lazy dinners as I call them, leftovers. So, guys, just so you know, while we're talking here about food and making everybody hungry, I'm mixing my gray mixture, which is my Besmar black and white, with the mixture, the blue that I made from the clear magenta and the jade. I just pretty much mixed those 50-50. And I'm just using it to shade the rock and just get some of that color in there. And then I'll probably do even a few touches of straight up jade and magenta, but I may do that mixed with a bit of white for kind of subtle highlights to make it, to bring this green and some of the magenta down onto the rock. Ah. Yeah, I actually have the Meathead book. I just got it, Bandar. I find that it was not a good book for a beginning griller, Bandar. I will say that. I actually think that Weber's Way to Grill book is much better for a rank beginner, as I was. I understand food science and I understand cooking, so Meathead was interesting, and I tried, but I tried to apply it before I understood like just how to got really familiar with my grill, and that was a mistake. So I would say Weber's Way to Grill first, then Meathead, because I tried to do hamburgers and I just didn't understand zones, and I didn't understand a lot of stuff about conduction, convection, all this. I didn't get it as much as I would have understood it if I had been doing burgers on the grill on a basic way for a long time. So I would say a combo of those two books would be good. they both regularly get rated like as the 1 and 2 and 3 spot, best books for grilling. So and dry brine. Yeah, dry brine is exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bandar is correct, and Twisted Dome are correct. They call that dry brining when you just put the salt on it and put it in the fridge. And yeah, you could do it with turkeys. I find that much more feasible than dipping turkeys into a water brine and trying to do that in your fridge. And honestly, it works the same. The salt is absorbed, the sodium goes into the tissues of the meat, and a chemical reaction occurs, and you get juicier, moister, more tender meat with less effort. So great, awesome, yay! So now we're talking cooking today. Now we've diverged onto that thread. All right, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time painting this bottom part, obviously, because there's going to be water all around it. Let's do some highlights on our rock. I can take this opportunity, though, to shade more darkly behind my wave here. It probably will be wet on that rock right behind that, so I can kind of block in a dark shadow back behind there. Now the tail will also be covering that, but just to show you guys, if there was no tail, I would block in a dark shadow here. I probably would limit my water around here. And if you're going to do kind of a semi-wet surface, like you're only going to make part of it wet, make an irregular outline to your darker spot so that you can imply, that kind of irregular splashing that would occur to make part of the rock wet and part dry. And also you can expect it to be wetter and darker, of course, in the cracks here where the water's going to stay and not necessarily all run off. But the darker I make the shadow back there, as you can see, the better you can see that translucent effect on the wave. So, Bandar, this banana doesn't feel very fulfilling. Mesquite is a type of tree jinky. It's often cut up and used for smoking in barbecue. So you would use wood chunks in your barbecue and get the smoke flavor. It's got a really savory kind of a. How would you? It's kind of a. It's got a definite like acidity to it almost. I don't know. It's kind of a sharp flavor. Would you say, Justin? Mesquite versus other woods.
See, wood flavors in regards to protein are really, for me, they're very hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I would agree with that. I think that it's definitely sharper, but it's also more of a, because mesquite is primarily what we smoke with down here. Like, mesquite is almost the wood of Texas.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
It's everywhere, and it's what people use. It's a hardwood that just works well. But I can't. It's more of a smell than it is a flavor for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can see that. I definitely think.
Also, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can tell if it's smoked with mesquite as opposed with everything else. But you're right. That could be a lot of the odor of the meat, and just kind of implying flavor because it just smells definitely add to taste. Like when you're.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. You're right. Yeah. I would say that for me, it's what I have the least experience with. So, like smoking in general, it's something that's always, it's easy to mess something up and make it taste too much like what smoke you're smelling.
Yeah.
And then people don't want to eat it, right?
Right.
But I mean, I prefer applewood, like Jenky's talking about. Like, I know it's not the smoking wood of Texas, but of all the woods, I prefer applewood. And that's just primarily bacon that I have it with. Bacon, other types of pork, and then some chicken. It works really well with chicken.
Yeah. It's a milder. It's less. It has less of that sharp flavor to it. I think is why.
Right.
You get that. I'm gonna throw some of my gray into this magenta, guys. I'm gonna throw some of my gray also into this green to make a more subtle, not as vibrant color. And then I'm gonna add a little white to it. And I'm going to use these colors to highlight my rock. Since I'm using it to highlight my rock, that's why I'm mixing in the gray as I'm taking in these colors down. I want some of these colors that are in my beast on the rock, but I still want them to kind of look like they're part of the rock. So to do that, I blend in a little bit of that gray that we used to paint the rock with.
Yeah, I just have never really... It's almost like it's acrid. It's not acrid, but it is, right? In a transference of flavor, maybe. It's like, God, I wish I had some here just to kind of taste and
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
know, right? You want to
you know.
just do. It's time to smoke a whole bunch of different batches
It
of stuff
is.
and then taste them. Yeah, it's
You're right. You know
funny.
what? And let's do a smoking stream.
I don't have a
We can do
smoker
a
out here. I could
let's
get
do it.
some. I could get a little cage and put some wood in my grill, and get a little bit of smoke going on.
I've
But
also
yes.
have never smoked. I've never smoked any meat. I've dry aged. I've cooked it in basically every way, but I've never smoked a meat before.
Yeah, Zach had a smoker, my ex. So he got a big one, big bullet shaped one. So he would do ribs. I actually almost bought ribs yesterday because I was like so craving them, and they had baby backs on sale. But yeah, he used to
Ooh.
smoke ribs, and he smoked a whole bunch of different things. He tried to smoke chickens. Um, that didn't work
I
as
want I
well.
want to try a brisket one of these days, but like a small brisket that's like
Yeah.
super prime cut, maybe like a little on the fattier side.
Well, yeah. Well, you want the point then. Point brisket is the fatty
Oh,
brisket.
yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Correct. That is exactly what I want. And
yes.
I don't know. One of these days I'll there's got to be an entry level smoker that I can pick up that's not too expensive that I can mess up a whole bunch of meat in
Well,
before I make it all to my.
well, you could probably get one on Craigslist. Honestly, Justin, a lot of people get them and then they don't use them, and then they try to like find a home for them for a lot less than they paid for it. So you might just look on Craigslist
All right. Yeah, let me check that out.
because they do tend to be like a little bit bigger and they take up space on your back porch. So it's uh it's
I
an
will
impulse
say
buy. Yeah, go ahead.
it's hard for me to eat ribs that aren't like otherwise I would say smoked or like barbecued really.
Uh
Just because I know that people do it in the pressure cookers and their slow cookers
huh.
and their Instapots, you name it. I mean,
Eh.
people do make ribs that way.
But it's
Um,
not. It's not
I don't
ribs.
care for them that way.
Yeah. Yeah, a brisket is low and slow for a very long time. Just be prepared to be waiting 12 to 14 hours for a really good brisket. That's the key. Really, I learned that from my ex because he's very good at it.
Yes, slow and slow.
Yep. So
Especially since like, and I think that Texas too, and maybe you're originally from what is it, Minnesota or Wisconsin?
I was born here in California actually, but then yeah,
Oh,
I grew up in Wisconsin.
now I know they have an amount of barbecue up there because it is still the Midwest,
But
right?
it's
It's not.
really not really. It's not Texas barbecue. Oh man, it's
No,
really
no.
terrible barbecue. Sorry, that was my.
Exactly. So I guess as far as styles go, and I realized that as I got older, because when I was younger, by the way, I hated barbecue
Oh
because
yeah.
to me barbecue always was slathered in a sweet sauce. And one thing I
Yes.
don't like with anything savory is I hate ketchup, for instance. I won't eat it on anything. I hate ketchup.
Yes.
And I don't like barbecue sauce. But one thing I found out growing up is that Texas is known for its dry rub, which is the best way, in my opinion, hands down, to eat barbecue. It is, it's so tasty. I love dry rub.
Yeah, my the Wisconsin barbecue is definitely sweet. Like
Is
that's
it?
yeah, it is. It's sad and disappointing.
The only sweet barbecue I would eat would be like maybe North Carolina or the Carolina barbecue where they do whole pig and they mix it all together and then they add sauce after the fact because they spend most of the time kind of um what is it basting it with like beef fat, not beef fat, with whatever fat and then like salt, right? And then
Right.
they add the barbecue sauce after the fact.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just grew up. I mean, it was so terrible that in southern Wisconsin, where I grew up, barbecue usually didn't mean anything like what we think barbecue is. It was actually just sloppy joes. Stuff
Oh,
like that. Yes, I'm not joking. It was terrible. I mean, I'm sure there were other forms of barbecue, but there's a lot of Scandinavian and German, so you could get a killer bratwurst, but try to find a smoked rack of ribs. Good luck.
and some of the best cheese you'll ever eat in your life.
Yeah, some awesome cheese. Yeah, Wisconsin does some things, but I just never was really into their barbecue. Like I was not impressed. I never went anywhere that had really good barbecue.
I
Like
think Gus is also from Wisconsin, isn't he?
yeah, yeah, he is.
Yeah, and when he used to go up there and visit and come back, he would bring back cheese,
Yep.
and it would be on. I mean, it was insanely good cheese.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
he'd go to like the local farmers, and it would keep for however long, right? Because he
Right.
had it refrigerated and bring it back for us, and it was crazy. I also Wisconsin's a place where people started eating. It's known for people eating what globs of cheddar cheese on apple pie, correct?
Everything. Yeah, the cheddar and apple pie is a thing in Wisconsin. Yep.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I could try that, Ann.
I have tried it. It's interesting, but it's nothing I would want to repeat because I just love apple pie the way it is. I'm
I
an
agree with you.
apple pie purist here, so.
I'm with you there. Maybe some like whipped cream, maybe, but that's because it can be light depending on if it's homemade or if it's out of the can.
Yeah. Wisconsin definitely. Wisconsin, I'm gonna agree with Heather there. At least in Wisconsin, cheese is definitely a food group. David makes fun of me actually because I have this tendency to want to melt cheese on things for dinner, and it is totally my Wisconsinian upbringing. He totally called me out on it. I did not realize it until he brought my attention to it. So, yeah, totally a Wisconsin thing. Midwestern, I dare say, because they melt cheese on everything. They fry everything and they melt cheese on it. So when I went gluten-free and dairy-free, going to Chicago was just like torture because you couldn't find anything to eat. Yeah, everything is breaded. Everything is fried,
See, I love, for the same reason that, Chicago is kind of torturous for you. I love food travel. So, like, if I go places, it's for the food. And then for the sites secondarily, right?
Right.
And I say that because, like, I was introduced recently to the hatch chili phenomenon in New Mexico specifically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, I know you get them here, but nothing here compares to what's there. Even the fast food variation of the hatch chili stuff that they make
Yeah.
for like regular places is insane.
Yeah.
Like, it is. They're fantastic. I get it now.
Yeah, Chili's in New Mexico. God, I love New Mexico food, and I don't eat spicy food much anywhere. Inara agreed. Got to be the sharp cheddar on the pie. Yes, Twistedoma. People in Wisconsin eat fried cheese curds all the time. When I was going to college in Madison, I would go up to the Capitol, which is where the where the farmers market was on the weekends, and they would be selling fried cheese curds, fresh. So yes. I am almost done pretty much putting, you see, so I've added some subtle colors into the rock here. So it looks kind of like a fairyland rock, actually. It's got some pinks and greens in it. But it's still, to the glance, it will look gray until you get close to it. So it's kind of like doing little subtle colors like this is kind of like a visual Easter egg. I kind of enjoy doing it for that reason. Because then you don't notice it, so you get closer, and then you're kind of like, oh, there's some pinks and greens in that rock, and that makes it look interesting. So I kind of like doing this sort of thing. But yeah, so there we go. Rock. Now I need to actually figure out where my water's going to go. Let's actually do that. Oh, I don't know. There's different versions of fried cheese curds everywhere, so let's see here. Bandar Barbecue. Kenny's Smokehouse. Good. That's fine in Celadon Oceans. We've been talking about cooking. Oh, Althai says beer +1 for beer battered cheese curds. Yeah, well, that's definitely Wisconsin right there. And I know you were in Madison teaching for a while, Althai, so yeah, you've been exposed to Wisconsinian cuisine as it is, such as it is. We do a few things very well. They do a few things very well. Cheese Castle in Kenosha. Oh my God, HM Road Dog, you are now in my hometown almost. I grew up in Bristol, which is just outside of Kenosha, and we always drove by Cheese Castle. And yes, beer battered cheese curds. There you are. I had no idea that you were familiar with that area, but yeah, I grew up in Bristol. So 5 minutes from Cheese Castle. And the brat stop. Oh, you're from Racine. Yeah. Small world.
I realize I'm very hungry.
Are you hungry?
I do, and now I want barbecue. And
I know, I'm going to get hungry too. You were married at Bristol Ren Fair, Heather? That's awesome. I used to go there every weekend. I worked at Six Flags Great America, and I would go into the Ren Fair just for like an hour before I went to work. I had friends who always worked at that fair. Oh yeah, Bandar. Don't even start the Vikings versus Packers rivalry. I'm not a big football fan. So.
It's unfortunate they both suck in comparison to the Cowboys. So.
Jeez, let's not even. I don't care about football that much. Not to argue about it. Thank you, Achilles Split.
It's become a thing on the channel where Ron and I are huge Cowboys fans, and everyone else is against us.
Yes,
it's kind of just a thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the Cowboys are evil. I mean, my brother used to be a fan, but I don't know if he still is. Oh yeah, Francis, I'm with you. I actually have cut down a lot on dairy. I can still have goat cheese and sheep cheese though, so I love my feta on my salad. It's so tasty. And David is nice and buys me manchego for burgers, which is really good on burgers actually. Let's see here. Yep. You have friends who were in court. That's awesome. Oh yeah. Oh, outside of Beloit. Yep. Oh boy, now look at all these Wisconsinites. Who stole this stream? Ah. Let's see. Yeah, Northwest. Yeah, I'm a big fan of oh dang. They make Scrimshaw. North Coast Brewing. I really like their beers. Let's see here.
Oh no, it's okay, Keldor. You got that completely flipped
all right,
around.
So what I'm gonna do here. Oh no, they're just. I tried to stop them getting on football, everybody, but they've taken the bait. Oh, that shouldn't have done it. My parents are all Packers. Okay, here you go, Justin. My parents are Packers stockholders. I got them a share of stock one year for Christmas when they opened it up. Let's see here. Try to get into hockey. Yeah. Let's see. I think I need. I want to put some green. But I think I want swamp green. I think we're gonna reach for the colors we were reaching for yesterday, guys. The rich leather and the swamp green. When I was doing the shadows in the water, I think I want my wet shadows on the rock to be those colors. I've used enough of this other green. Now I need to find my swamp green, so I need to readjust my eyeballs. Where are you, swamp green? I need you. Oh no, swamp green.
Oh, sorry, I was typing. Your parents actually own stock in
the Green Bay Packers. Yep.
That's really cool. I wish my parents owned stock in the Cowboys.
I don't know if the Cowboys do public stock offerings. The Packers regularly do to get fans. Just another investment from the fans, right?
Yeah, I don't. They probably don't, being that I think the Cowboys franchise, last I checked, and I'm pretty sure it's still the case, is the most expensive franchise in the world across all sports.
Yeah.
It is absolutely. Cowboys are literally number one in both business and definitely not football. Listen, I'm not delusional. Cowboys are pretty lacking in the actual application of their sport. They make a lot of money, but they're not very good on the field.
That's maybe all right. This year. I mean, I follow esports, and there are definitely teams that have a huge fan base that never win, but still have a huge fan base. So it is what it is. Yes, Green Bay Packers are publicly owned by all the people who buy the stock. Cowboys are all Jerry Jones owned. Yeah, it is very different, Vandar. Yep. Well, and technically Green Bay has stockholders who own a lot more of the stock, right, that are primary on the board, so to speak, versus a lot of the fans who just own maybe a couple shares of it. So,
because I'd have to imagine if the Cowboys actually had any sort of, if it was publicly traded at all, then we would probably vote Jerry out.
Yeah, no joke, right? I know enough about Texas football to understand that. All right, so I'm putting in a swamp green glaze on the bottom here, and I'm going to put a little bit of brown over it too. And what this green glaze is going to be is the wet area that I will then gloss over. And a lot of time when a rock gets wet a lot in freshwater, as you guys no doubt know, is algae grows on it, and it gets kind of that green fur going on. So that's what we are simulating by doing kind of a glaze of our green. I got a little heavy with my glaze, so I'm going to dab off some of it with a damp brush. But just a little hint of that green in stones in general. I love swamp green for this. And actually, Trollhide from the Dungeon Dwellers is also a great color for this. Just glazing some of that dark green into cracks or in areas what you want to suggest wetness. Or if you're doing a puddle, doing a glaze of this color on the bottom of the puddle before you put in the water effect. All of that is a great... is a really good way to use these colors. I think these dark olivey greens, Trollhide and Swamp Green, are just fantastic for this. Swamp Green is 9175. So there we go. And I also did put some Swamp Green into my shadows, so that'll all go together. All right, let me see here. Yeah, you can't have every team win. You got it, Francis. Yep.
To Crispy's point, though, and I think everyone in the chat, or at least a vast majority, can agree with this, the Patriots should suck for a while, and we're all Every last one of us.
Oh, hey, maybe I can show you guys my trick. It's been a while. I put this goop down at the start of the stream for a reason. Let's see if I can get it to do what I got it to do yesterday. So remember what I mentioned at the start of the stream is how I did my frothy water here, down here, is that I put some of my water effects in the bottom of a little plastic tray. You need plastic card. I just tend to use miniatures trays because I have them, blister packs. And most of us have them if we open a Reaper miniature. And you could take it when it started to set around the outside, but it's still goopy in the middle. And you could kind of rip it up. And it'll get chunky. It'll turn into kind of a blob like that. And that's what's really useful then to transfer, because it's still wet on the bottom, transfer onto these wavelets to form into splashies. And you just want to put it there lightly. And I'm going to wipe off my sculpting tool here. And then I'm going to kind of tamp this down a bit. I'm going to try to kind of stick it down. I can press it down onto this wave that I sculpted. And smush it, try to kind of manipulate it until it's the shape I want. And since it's kind of mushy, I can actually kind of smush it down onto the wave. And then I can try to use some of the shapes I've created and see if I can get them to look like water. So kind of dabbing and poking at them to make them look like a splash. I want the direction to be a bit different on this one, so I might lose it. That might be okay.
So in the sense, essentially, you're making White Claws.
Is that what it is?
Just to clarify.
There.
I mean, in the popularity of the drink, it's the White Claw is in reference to the splashy top of the wave that does turn white.
Oh yeah. Well, this is a non-alcoholic version.
Oh man, that would have been a perfect stream name. We make non-alcoholic White Claws.
So see how I've got that. Now what I do need is I need a little bit more in the back. And this sploosh needs to be coming out more toward the front of the wavelet. So you kind of got to look at, yeah, there we go. And then I probably want even more back there. So I'm going to, again, it's stuck. You can kind of see. It's cured on the outside and bottom. So I can kind of scrape it up, again, into a mass. And then it's still wet enough for me to stick it somewhere if I want to. This is a big glob. It might be too big for the back of this wave, actually. So I might have to stick it back down.
You know, I've seen people do these on minis, like at the MSP paint contest. And I never knew what it was. I thought it was just painting.
Yep.
But no, this is cool. I think this is something I've seen other places.
Yeah. Water effects is really your go-to tool for this sort of thing. I don't use it often, which is actually kind of a shame because I really love water bases. I do love putting water on bases, and if it comes up kind of particular like that, guys, you can just kind of mix it up. Like, so it's got a little bit of binder, and my bottle is very old, so sometimes you have to. There, now I want a dollop on the end of my sculpting tool, and I want to put that dollop on the back here. And I can also, at this point, use this fresh stuff to add really more fine threads right on the front of this. Like if I want a few more peaks, or if I want to thicken some of the peaks that I've got, I can add this on there. And I can also use it to add small pieces like down there. Now, the one thing this stuff is it is fairly fragile. Like, I can squish it very easily. So you do want to put it in places where you're not always going to be accidentally compressing it once you got it there. You can snip it off if you're very gentle with the side cutters. Like, if this piece is too thick, like if I decide I don't like it as much, I could probably tune it a little bit later. Take part of it off very gently with the side cutters. But I'll try to make the shape work just by adding a little bit more detail to it. But yeah, I do love working with water effects. It's a little persnickety, but if you're patient with it, you can get some really cool effects, as you can see. Just a little bit of patience. There's our wave that's coming up to splash. And now I can put on, and I could do this after or before I do my gloss coat, but if I want to add some more water foam and texture-y stuff, I can add it in here. Like if I want to say there's like foam coming up onto the rock here, I could actually grab part of my other. Let me grab my thing here, my partially cured one. See if I can stuff it back there after all. Let's see. I kind of, because I don't want that gap so much. I want some water frothing around here. There we go. So I just smooshed it in, again, having just like a piece of brass rod or something to kind of smoosh it in. And now I'm going to play with it a little and see if I can pluck it up into more splashy shapes. Splashy shapes. It's fun. It's a good time. And then maybe I'll do the other side. Grab a little bit of that partially cured stuff. Get it on the other one. Got lots of room on this side. Got to wipe off my tool. Don't want too much of it to dry up on the tool. It'll dry with translucent. Twisted Oma. If you want it to be white, you want to back paint it with white or underpaint it with white. It's kind of why I did the crests of these waves in white. Now, remember that just like I did here, if you put a backdrop behind it of a dark color, it will look white. But yeah, if I wanted it to stay this color, I would probably want to underpaint or backpaint it. So like once it was dry, come in and just kind of touch it up with white on the back so that it shows through the front. And then just paint over that with a gloss coat. So you could do that. I don't think you could possibly mix a white ink into it, but I would hate to. I would think that if you mix any fluid into it, it runs the risk of compromising the way that it dries and its properties. That's usually the case when you're playing around with stuff like that. So I would just choose to paint the backside white and then gloss it. And that will show through the front because it's transparent. It is not crumbly, Francis. It's actually kind of gluey. It's like a silicone. It's like silicone. It has that rubbery consistency to it. So you can smoosh it if you've got really delicate tendrils like this guy up here. Like I can press that down. It'll move. Here, let me try it with my tool. So it'll move, but it is pretty tough. Like I would have to twist it and pull it to get it off. So it's not brittle at all, which is, it's nice. It gives it an additional, kind of layer of durability. I would still never put it like somewhere on top of something or something where it's going to get smushed all the time or handled. But that's that sort of thing. Base flocking water effect products. Well, oh god, there's so much now, Mathophile. I've talked about cork on the other on other streams, and various types and thicknesses of cork are good for water effects. This is it. I love water effects and realistic water, or even instead of realistic water, I often will just pour gloss sealer if I need a puddle. It works the same way. But for water effects like this, where you're doing icicles or wave tops or things where you want a real splash effect, this stuff is the stuff. This is what I use. There is nothing else on the market really like it. But yeah, as far as basing goes, it varies depending on what kind of base you're doing. Are you doing water or desert, or if you're, I sculpt a lot with Fimo if I want a sculpted base. I use plastic art, I use green stuff. If you were on at all when I was doing Frost Giant Queen and her base, then you know that I was starting to experiment with the wood putty that David uses a lot, that I really like now, that you can do like shapes like this for, but I'm using green stuff, plastic art, clear plastic, that really, and you can use anything on a base that's not going to rot and not going to go bad and isn't too terribly fragile. So there are basing materials all around you. So, all right, now I'm going to get some gloss. Let's get this gloss. I do not have Reaper gloss right at hand, so I will use my micro scale micro gloss, which is just from a company that typically does car stuff. I'm going to pour a little bit of it into here to work with it. It dries pretty darn hard, so I don't want it to dry my palette, or I'm going to have to real scrub fest ahead of me. So I'm just pouring a little bit into a disposable container. You can use it in your brush. Just make sure to rinse your brush. So I'm going to use one of my crappier brushes, just in case. And I'm going to tilt it so it stays there. And I'm going to apply it all where I put my dark green shadow on these rocks. Actually, you know what? I'll use my regular brush. It'll be okay. I'll just rinse it really fast. So wet the brush, use the gloss. If you're using a thicker gloss, you want to use it full strength. I'm going to paint it over this area that I put the green in, wherever I kind of glazed green. to suggest that it's wet. And I certainly could build it up more at the bottom to get a glossier effect right where it's near the water. I can use it just like paint. I can kind of dab it off my brush to get a thinner line so that I can draw like a thin line of wet in here in this crack and leave opacity around it. The front of this rock is going to be pretty wet. I probably need to paint over that with some green. But that will give me... And I can add little, like there's a little divot in the rock here at the top. And so it's a darker divot. So I put a little sploosh. I figured water would catch there. So you can add little bits like that. Pay attention to realism at that point and say, where would my water pool? Would it pool up here on the top? Yeah, it would probably pool here and there. This would be wet. This might be a little wet. You know, but be selective about it. Don't just gloss your whole base. So that gives me my wet look. And then I can, since I have my gloss out, I may as well gloss my water. I'm going to make it harder to see the cool paint effects I did, although they'll still show up in the right light, so it's not totally wasted effort. Do be careful that you don't get it on your outside base. It's hard to get off. This is true of all gloss. The nature of gloss varnish is that it's 100% acrylic, and it will dry shiny and it will dry hard. So you don't want to get it on anything that you don't want it on, because it's going to be a beast to take off if you miss that you accidentally put it on there. And put some more over here. There we go. Just get some gloss over here. And I don't mind if I get a bit of pooling with this. It's just going to look deeper and glossier if I put it in the troughs of things. So there's no problem there. And now I have a very wet looking water base, which is great. Yay, and the rocks look wet. So now I've got my effect. Now rinse out. Yeah, what was that? What is this stuff called? The gloss sealer? I would just use Reaper gloss sealer normally, Cassandra, but I just didn't have it to hand. I didn't want to dig through my box and waste time, so I'm just using a different brand, which is I forget who does, Microscale. They do a lot of stuff for cars and planes, hobby cars and planes, and it's micro gloss. So it's water-based, gloss finish, clear finish, non-yellowing, and tough because, well, it is acrylic. And acrylic is tough. So normally I would use Reaper Gloss Sealer. The hard coat from GW is a similar product. And this micro gloss, and then I think my love over there has also a thicker, like you can get a heavy-bodied gloss, and that will be a thicker gloss that will dry very shiny, especially where it pools. So yeah, you can use dry spices. Actually, what really works with that stuff, Twisted Oma, as a tip, because I've done this, is if you mix, for basing, if you mix like flock and static grass and dried herbs and maybe a tiny bit of really fine sand, you can make a very natural looking basing material that you mix it all up, use an old Tupperware or an old like cottage cheese container or something, you know, something like that. And just keep it mixed up in there. And the fact that you're mixing all those different basing types makes it look more natural when you put it on a base, because a normal, you know, outdoor base would have all the different loam and bark and dry leaves and, you know, and grass and all sorts of stuff. So if you use that mix, then you can get a really natural looking basing. I've got a tub of it that I mixed up eons ago, and it's still going strong because, of course, you know, you use so little of it at a time. But it's the most natural basing effect that I have. So definitely use your dried herbs that way. They work really well that way. And then your base smells like oregano. Oh, the stuff that I made, that's Woodland Scenic's water effects, actually, Cassandra. If you go back and do watch this one, I started working with it yesterday. So essentially it's Woodland Scenic's water effects, and it makes kind of a goopy paste that starts white and turns clear. And I get nice built-up effects with it if I put down a glob and then let it partially dry and then peel it up and poke it with a sculpting tool while it's still a little bit wet. And that's how I made all these nice wave tops. So this wave top was done yesterday, and you see it's gone clear. To make it stand out, I had to do dark behind it. And when the tail goes down, I'm going to have to also darken the area of the tail that's behind it. Sadly, we'll lose some of our cool rock wet effect when the tail comes down, but at least we'll be able to see it behind the tail, and we can see the front here. But yeah, so if somebody asked how to keep it white, the only way to keep it white really would be to wait for it to dry and then maybe to paint some thinned white on the back side of stuff. That way you'll still get the gloss on the front, but the white behind it will show through. Yeah, Woodland Scenic's water effects I love it. It's for this sort of thing. It's just really fun to work with. Really fun. Yeah, you can always add cinnamon to your bases, right? Yeah, you can almost seal it, correct? Francis, most of our stuff is supposed to be non-yellowing. That said, almost any lacquer or sealer will yellow over time, eventually. When they say non-yellowing, they just mean it holds off for longer than your average bear. But there we go. I am going to be doing water on the other side, Crispies. Since I did this part, I didn't want people to have to watch, me do the same thing on the other side. So I was kind of finishing out this side. Now, what I am considering doing is doing something like a tree limb in the water over here. And actually, okay, that actually is my cue to show you guys a product. Again, it's Woodland Scenics. Their stuff is really, really good. They do it for model railroading. But if you don't want to sculpt a tree limb and you want like a tree limb on your base or something, they make a product called Deadfall. And it is twigs. It's various twigs of various sizes, everything from tiny twigs, many of which I've already used, to really big twigs that you can use as a basis for trees. So they're already, debugged and dried out. And here, let me get out a couple. So you got shapes like this. They're really inexpensive. You can order it on Amazon. This one would make a good base for a tree. You can put it kind of like that. That would be a great one because it looks like it has roots on the bottom. Kind of an old dead tree. And they do give you some small ones also. Let me dig out a couple of small ones. So they have a whole bunch of different shapes, and there we are. There's my little guys. You can see it next to the brush to see how thin they are. So they're very useful. It's really inexpensive. If you don't want to go out hunting and do your own delousing and everything of twigs near you, then the Deadfall may be a good option for you. I got this bag eons ago, and it's just finally getting to the point where I'm almost out. But so I thought about using one of these twigs in the water over there, but I don't really have the right shape because I'd want it to go up and kind of down. I kind of want a triangle shape, kind of poking up out of the water. So I'm gonna mess with it because the other thing that those twigs are good for is to use as a basis for sculpting your own twig or tree. Like, just start with that actual wood, put some wires into it, obviously, because you can, it's wood, just drill into it, pin it, right? And then use green stuff to sculpt thinner branches on top of the existing wood. So I may actually do that just for fun. And that gives you kind of a wood texture to start out with, and then you can kind of make it match. So yeah, okay, I think we have covered a lot of stuff today. Tomorrow is Casual Friday. I don't know what we'll be doing tomorrow. I kind of still want to paint the tail. Huh?
More Spirit Beast.
More Spirit Beast. Justin is a fan of the Spirit Beast. I'm glad you're a fan of the Spirit Beast.
I love blue, and I like shades of green that look blue.
Okay, so yes, this is all up your alley.
Oh, it is, 100%. I even like the antlers as a contrast.
It's good, fantastic. Good. Yeah, all right, cool. Well, great, guys. Well, then, maybe because Justin asked, we'll spend a final day on Spirit Beast. I really do want to switch to a different topic next week. Just because Spirit Beast has been spiriting for almost 2 weeks now, and I'm glad you guys have stuck with it. I hope it hasn't been boring. I think he is turning out really well. Makes me happy, even though I still have a whole bunch of stuff to do, like gap filling, more green work, and all the rest of it over here. But at least we've got a pretty good run on him. He's looking pretty good. So there we are. More Spirit Beast. All right, another vote from Miss Tim for more Spirit Beast. Sweet. Excellent.
Hey, as a side note, though, if you really want to, I'm not going to stop you. You can send it to me, and I'll display it next to my
I know. I think no.
It's fine. It's fine.
I need to do. For one thing, I need to do more work for Justin. But if you want an hand-painted miniature, maybe you'll get lucky one of these years on your birthday or whatever.
That would be awesome. Completely unrelated. My birthday is September 12th.
Oh, all right. September birthday. Cool.
It is. Yeah. Isn't your birthday's in September, isn't it?
No, June. I'm actually I am midsummer. I am the longest day of the year, June 21st.
Oh, your mother was pregnant throughout the summer months?
Well, no, she was pregnant because it's June 21st, so it's technically mostly heavily pregnant in late spring.
Oh, yeah, in Wisconsin, well, in this case, California would have really mild springs and summers, right?
Well, and they live
Where
here.
they
Like
are.
they
Oh,
lived in Mountain View. Like they were actually in the town I'm in. And I can tell you the weather this morning was 61 and it's supposed to get up to 82 today. A beautiful dry 82. So,
yeah, I
yeah.
really I hand it to the women here, particularly in the DFW, that if they decide to be pregnant throughout the summer months,
Oh my god,
could you
yeah.
just could you imagine?
Carwin, you're super funny. We lived through Dance with Dragons. We can survive a week of Spirit Beast. You're right, right? That was 9 months of insane draconic silliness. So, absolutely. Okay, great. I'm glad you guys are still learning stuff. So yeah, now we've played with water and we demoed it a couple different days. Be sure if you only caught today, if you want to see kind of how I started out sculpting all of this stuff and painting it, you can see that on yesterday's stream. But yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good. So Justin, my question is, do we have a raid?
Yes, we do. We're going to
Oh,
be
I lost you in my ear.
following suit for
Now
the
I asked him a question.
previous.
Now I can't even hear him. All right, now I can hear
Oh
you.
no, we're going to be following suit
Oh
from what
right,
we did
right,
the last couple.
Paizo. Yeah. There we go. All right, guys. Thank you so
Man,
much for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow for our last day of the week with Spirity Beast. And have fun and say hi to the Paizo peeps for us. And I hope you guys have a great Thursday. All right? We will see you later. Ta!
all right, guys. Thank you very much for coming out. Don't forget it's Thursday, so you can look forward to Sadie's stream today at 3 o'clock. And after that, we have Reaper Live. So don't forget to stop by, guys. I know you can check out PaizoCon. They're doing lots of fun stuff in their Discord and other things. But do not, do not forget to come back and watch our other shows because, we miss you guys when we don't see you. So thank you guys very much. Have a great day.